Good morning, everybody. I am Clayton Borges, English teacher. Today, we are going to study a review about the units 3, 4, and 5 from ID 2. We start with the topic talking about the feelings about traveling. And in some aspects, we talk about feelings when we travel to another place. So we can give in English some feelings and examples about the trips that we do. So with the verbs love, like, and hate, it's possible to say the next actual verb in infinitive form, like to travel, or with ing form, gerund form, traveling, for example. And we have the complement at the end. So as a feeling about the trip, traveling, we can say, for example, I love to travel alone. Or it's possible to say, I love traveling alone for these verbs. For other verbs like enjoy, don't mind, can't stand, so they are classified as state verbs. And we don't usually say in infinitive form the action verb. It's possible to say only in gerund form, like traveling. In English, we can say, for example, I enjoy traveling alone, traveling with family, traveling with friends. We can say, I don't mind traveling with my family. Okay, I can't stand traveling with friends, for example, because they are state verbs. So, what are the state verbs in English? Some verbs that express state or condition do not appear in continuous forms. For example, are verbs that are thoughts: agree, believe, forget, guess, know, remember. I had to write here the letter M. Think, understand. Verbs like emotions. For example, adore, hate, like, love, need, prefer, want. State verbs like senses. For example, feel, hear, look, see, smell, taste, touch. And verbs that are possession. For example, belong, have, own. All these verbs are state verbs. So it's not possible to say with infinitive form when we say our feelings. For example, we can say our teacher needs a new cell phone in simple present, because it's wrong to say our teacher is needing a new cell phone. This is not possible. Okay, it's because this is a state verb. We don't say with gerund form with ing, suffix ing. So state verbs that express that state or condition do not appear in continuous form. All right? So the next topic is about the present perfect tense, about the past experiences. What's the function of this tense in English? It is used to describe experiences that have happened at some point in the past, but the specific time is not important, and the focus is on the experience itself. For example, we can say, I've been to Indonesia twice. She hasn't eaten sushi. So what's the structure for this tense in English for present perfect? We say the subject plus the form of the verb have or has. It depends of the subject, because the form has we say for the third person. They are he, she, and it. And we have to remind that each past participle of the verb has the itself form. For example, when we say the verb be in the past participle, we say being, for example. For questions, we change the order of have or has and the person. So how can we say this example for questions? What countries have you visited? Has my brother met his favorite singer? Have you ever seen this before? So we say the verb has or have in the beginning of the question, and we always say the past participle of the verb after that, after the subject. So the word ever is often used in questions. Ever. For example, has Mary ever climbed the Eiffel? For negative sentences, for example, we say has or have in negative or never. For example, we can say they haven't been to a concert, or I've never seen an alien. So never means haven't in the present perfect, and this is the contraction form when we say I have, and we say I've, contraction form in English. For present perfect, now the function is about completed actions. When we say this tense in English, with already, we usually say with just or yet to express completed actions within a specific time period in relation to expectations. Let's see some examples. When we say with already, is used in a positive sentence to express that an action has already happened, often sooner than expected. So, for example, we can say, I have already finished my homework. Another example is, I have finished my homework already. So, already is the tip to say this tense in English. So, another example is about the word just. Just is used for positive sentences to indicate that an action has just been completed very recently. For example, we can say, I have just arrived. This is very recently example in English. Another example is, Alex has just given the eraser to his daughter. Another tip is when we say the word yet in present perfect. For this case, use it in negative sentences and questions to indicate that something has not yet happened. For example, we can say, have you finished your homework yet? Another example is, I haven't finished my homework yet. So, yet is said in negative sentences and questions. So, already indicates something happened sooner than expect. Just refers to something done very recently, and yet indicates something that hasn't happened up to the present. So this is the tip about this function. Concerning the difference between English, we usually study American English in Brazil, but we have some schools that teach British English, for example. So they are very different. So For present perfect, for example, is more common in British English. In American English, it's more common to use simple past or for completed actions. For example, we can say, I just woke up. So this example, I just woke up, is common for American English. Okay, because this is just a simple past form. Another example is, we didn't travel to London yet. Instead of saying we haven't traveled to London yet. So in this case, this form is more common in British English, but in American English, we only say the simple past or completed action. For completed action. Now, we talk about the present perfect tense for unfinished past. What's the function of this tense in English? We say with for or since to talk about an action or state that started in the past and continues now. So for, we say for with time expression, duration of an action. For example, let's look at some examples here. I've had a headache for about 2 days. So we say the preposition for, and the time expression in this case is the example about 2 days. This is the duration of an action in English. Another example is, I haven't spoken to him for a long time. And for is the preposition. What's the duration of the action here? Is a long time. This is unfinished past examples. So the word since, for example, plus time expression, the action started. For example, we can say, I've lived here since I was a little girl. Another example is, Clayton has worked here since 2013. This is the sense plus time expression, the action that started in this period. Examples of time expression for present perfect for unfinished past is the duration. We say some examples here for duration. For a long time, we can say for many years, we can say for 10 weeks, and among others examples. For point in time with since, we can say since yesterday, since 1984, since I left college. There are some examples for point in time. So now we talk about some vocabularies of kind of adjectives that we can describe children or a child when they were little boys, okay, little girls. So these are the adjectives that we can describe the children or our child in English. We say funny, for example, is like that. To laugh and entertain people. This is the definition of the adjective funny. Sometimes in the past, we were active and creative. So what's the meaning of this? Do many activities at the same time and never get tired. Sometimes we were sociable when we were children. What's the definition of sociable? Sociable is make a lot of friends, for example, at their own age or older, very easily. The adjective kind means are always helping people in trouble. And some kids were hardworking, for example. What's the meaning? Like to do well in school, to make their parents happy. Maybe they were sensitive. They cry if other kids make fun of them. And shy, the active is shy. Shy, what's the meaning? Like to be alone sometimes. Curious, like to know how machines work, for example. Independent, for example, what's the meaning? Like to explore the world on their own. Some children were honest. Don't hesitate to tell people what they think of them. Were you a spoiled child? What's the meaning of spoiled? Won't stop until they get what they want. That's interesting, because I think most of the children were spoiled in the past. Children were aggressive in the past. What's the meaning? Fight more often than most other kids. Obedient is wash their hands and take showers without a fight. Maybe they were critical, hate lazy people, and always expect perfection. And maybe children in the past were responsible. What's the meaning of responsible? Take the initiative to do chores around the house. So these are the adjectives to describe children in the past. So the next topic is about the use of used to. What's the function in English for used to? We usually say for the past. So used to, past states that have ended and actions that happened regularly in the past but don't happen now. For example, we have here 4 examples in English. I used it to play a lot of sports when I was a teenager. So in this example, this is an action that happened in the past regularly, okay, but today don't happen anymore. Another example is my brother used it to make fun of me when I was young. My sister didn't use to play any game when she was a kid. Another example is, did your grandfather used to cook very well a long time ago? So I want to check this information. That's why the question starts with did, the auxiliary verb, did. And the form of the verb use in a basic form, use to. So the difference between the simple past, what's the function of the simple past? Related to used to. The function is to talk about past activities and events at a specific point in time. For example, we can say, my uncle arrived a few minutes ago. Did you see the news yesterday? There was a storm last night. We saw a great movie last week. My sister wasn't born in 2024. So pay attention, class, because when we talk about the simple past, we usually say a time expression that indicates the action in the past. Between these examples, we have a few minutes ago, yesterday, last night, last week. Okay, so they are time expression commonly said in simple past. So, what's the difference between here, comparative and superlatives? This is a subject that we have learned in level 2 and 3 of the course. Here, we start with some examples first. Camping is cheaper than staying at a hotel. So, cheaper than is the comparative form. Another example, it's probably the ugliest building in New York. So the ugliest is the superlative form. So this is an opinion between all the buildings in New York. So this is the ugliest, this superlative. Another example is the hotel is the most expensive in London. The New York is as expensive as London. So this is a comparative form with the structure as, and we say the adjective, for example, expensive, and we repeat the form as to compare things here. Another example, she's as beautiful as her mother. And the last example, the UK is not as big as the US. In this last example, we criticize an example, an opinion about something. Is not as big as the US. This is the example of this. For example, and we have the rules about the adjectives. When we say the comparative and superlative form of the adjectives, when we have adjectives ending with CVC or O or consonant, vowel, consonant, we double the final consonant and add or ist. For example, rich, comparative form we say richer, but for superlative we say the richest. Big, for comparative, we say bigger. So we double the last consonant, the last letter. So we say double G before saying ER in that end, okay? Bigger. For superlative, we say the biggest. So if you have the adjective, one or two syllable adjectives ending in Y. So we change Y to IER or IEST. For example, the adjective crazy ends with the letter Y. So for comparative form, we say crazier. And for superlative, we say the craziest. The same as for the adjective easy. So we say for the comparative form, easier. For superlative, we say the easiest. Now, adjectives with two or more syllables, we say more or the most for superlative in the beginning. For adjective beautiful, for example, it has three syllables, so we say for comparative the word more before the adjective in a basic form. More beautiful. And for superlative, we say the structure the most beautiful. So the opposite of more and then is less than. So they are the opposites, more and less. Okay, more for positive and less for negative. And the opposite of the most is the least. For superlatives, for example, we can say the subway is usually less crowded at night. Vatican City is the least populated city-state in the world. It has only about 800 residents. In this case, we have the irregular adjectives, so they have all the forms in comparative and superlative, and we have to try to keep in mind these adjectives in English. For example, the adjective good in comparative is better, but for superlative, we say the best. The adjective bad, what's the comparative form? We say worse. But for superlative, we say the worst. And far, for example, well, for comparative, we say father, father. But for superlative, we say the farthest or the furthest in English. And the comparative structure as and the adjective plus as. We say for two things with similar qualities, it is very common in comparisons that use no literal image. For example, the wind is as cold as ice. It was the scariest movie we've ever seen. My little sister was as white as a sheet. That's interesting. The joke is as old as a dinosaur. So use the negative form not as, adjective as, to criticize and talk about differences. For example, his pizzas aren't as good as Mario's pizzas. So in this example, we criticize about something. So now, in this unit, we have just to remind how to say these school subjects in English. So we are going to say each one. If you want, you can pause this video and repeat loud. So let's repeat here each one. Biology, geography, history, psychology, philosophy, language, sociology. Okay, one more time. Sociology, chemistry, politics, economics, physics, business, mathematics, engineering, computer, system, art, law, literature. So these three subjects, art, law, literature, are Romance languages. So what about the obligation and prohibition? What's the difference? This is very easy to comprehend. So in English, to express an obligation, it's more common to say the structure have got to. So have got to is more common in speaking in situations in English. For example, we could say, we've got to take the test tomorrow. This is more common than we have to take the test tomorrow in English, but they have the same meaning in English. And the structure can't, this is the modal verb can't in negative, indicates prohibition in English. For example, they can't smoke in this building. So this is a prohibition example. So what's the difference between to and enough in English? We say to always has a negative connotation when used before an adjective. For example, we can say, I'm too tired to go swimming. So in this case, we mention the adjective tired. So we say to emphasize the quality of the adjective tired. Too tired. Another example, Sylvia is 10. She's too old to sleep in her mother's bed. The difference between enough, when we say the enough in English, gives the idea of sufficient. If it is used with an adjective, it will always come after the adjective. But, pay attention class, but it is used before nouns. For example, Patricia is only 4. She's not old enough to travel on her own. So the enough position here is mentioned after the adjective old. All right? Another example, these clothes are good enough for you to go to school. One more time, we mention the adjective good. So after that, we say the meaning of enough, sufficient, good enough. Another example is when we mention a noun in English. So we say before this noun in English. For example, I have enough money to buy that, because it's wrong to say after the noun, for example, money. We don't say I have money enough. No, we say I have enough money to buy that. So the difference between too much and too many. Too much is used with countable nouns. For example, I have too much work to do. You're making too much noisy and I can't concentrate. In these two examples, the idea of work or noise is uncountable. That's why we say too much. Different from too many is used with countable nouns. For examples, there are too many people in this room. People is countable. And there aren't too many students in this class today. And the word here, students, is countable. That's why we say too many. So, this topic is about the zero conditional. What zero conditional in English? It is used to express general truths, scientific facts, natural laws. Pay attention to this word, generalizations, or statements that are always true, class. What's the structure? In this case, we say the conditional clause starting with if or when. These two words, if or when, in simple present. And the next clause is the result. The result clause also in simple present. Let's look at these examples. We can say, if you heat ice, what's the result of this action? It melts. Okay? It's possible to say, to start with when. When you heat ice, what's the result? It melts in English. Let's look to the next example. If you touch a hot stove, what's the result? You get burned. Obviously. We can start with when to. When you touch a hot stove, you get burned. Okay? Another example is we change. We start the idea with the result clause, and after that we say the conditional clause in English. Water boils if you heat it to 100 degrees Celsius. In this case, it's not a problem to say in English, to speak in English this example. But if you have to write down in your notebook, it's not necessary to write the common signal, the common sign in English. So you say directly. We can say to in English, water boils when you heat it to 100 degrees Celsius. And the last example, if you leave the tap open, the water spills down. So this is the result. The water spills down. So in these two clauses, we have the simple present. The one is the conditional, and the other is the result clause in English. That's the zero conditional in English. So what's the difference between the first conditional? What's the function? It expresses a probable or certain future situation dependent on a conditional and their future results. It also expresses promises and warnings. So in this case, what's the structure of the first conditional? We say first, the conditional clause always starting with if in simple present, but the difference now is that the result clause is in the future tense with will. Let's look at these examples. If you study hard, you will pass the exam. And this is the result for the future. You will pass the exam. Another example. If I have the time, that's the conditional. If I have the time, what's the result for the future? I will visit my friends. And the last example, the conditional clause. If the weather is nice, what's the result for the future? We will go to the beach. This is the conditional clause for the future. Okay? So always indicated with the modal will. Okay? In English. So class, it was the review about the units 3, 4, and 5 from our books English ID 2. And I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to share and subscribe and to like this video. And I hope you like it so much. Thank you so much, class. See you in the next time.